Hey guys, hey. Stop guys, where are you going? I work so hard on this video, guys. Don't leave.
All right, guys, you know the drill. Today I'm going to be discussing the one matchup I really think it's a real thing. I really believe it. I really think this is going to be the people's main event. Nobody gives a fuck about Merab Dvalishvili versus Piotr Jan 2. I mean, let's just be honest. It's a cut and dry matchup. Piotr Jan's going to get fucking dominated, probably going to get finished this time around. So I just figured why not discuss the matchup that might have some merit to, an argument on both sides, right? So I know where everybody is coming in from. I think it's going to be a sick matchup. Josh Van obviously has a lot of potential and brings something different to the table than a lot of the other fighters. He's got the 5 round cardio potentially, even though we haven't really seen it. He's got the striking, the counter punching, and his takedown defense has been improving and this and that. But I think people are failing to understand a couple different things about this matchup here. And I'm going to really dive into the X's and O's and break it down fully for you guys so you understand why Alexandre Pantoja probably just runs through Joshua Van and makes it a cakewalk. I think he's just a little bit too young. He's just a little underdeveloped and a little bit one dimensional. So I'm going to break that down right now for you. So first things first, I'm just going to dive right into the matchup alone. So there's a couple things I want to go ahead and put out there. So Joshua Van, a lot of his success, I'd say majority of his success and his best weapon in his game is his pull counter. Okay, that's how he, the slip slash pull counter. That's how he's winning a lot of these fights. That's his best weapon, no doubt in my mind. He's a counter puncher, which is kind of a weird thing for a shorter guy, but obviously it makes sense being the fact that he needs people to get into range, and him entering range, you see it in his career. He doesn't really have a ton of success when he's entering the range and pressing the action. He likes to counter, so they enter his range where he's loaded up and powerful, and then he delivers, that beautiful counter shot. So a lot of it relies on, him being in the space to bait a shot, and then that shot coming in and obviously dodging it and throwing it back. So that's just the simple pull counter. The problem with the pull counter in this matchup here, though, is I think Pantoja is quite levels above it, and while it's a good tool and a good weapon to have, when I feel like that's the only time I ever see Joshua Van landing any type of damage on his opponent, I think it's going to be pretty cut and dry on how to defeat that pull counter with the tool set that Alexandre Pantoja has. Now you might be wondering, so how does he do that? Okay, pretty simple. I'm not going to sit here and draw it out too long. Alexandre Pantoja has a lot of forward pressure, which is going to be needed to defeat that pull counter, skill set there. So what he would do is look to throw a cross, and likely step in deep, and then right after that smother, and avoid the pull counter just by smothering and shooting a shot, or like I said, just running in full speed and kind of just getting his head off center line where he doesn't get hit by that counter. It's a pretty simple game plan that I think Pantoja is going to use to get those takedowns pretty easily and pretty quickly. And just discussing the takedowns as well, I've seen Joshua Van not look too great on the takedowns against a Ray Saruya, against Cody Durden, against a lot of different fighters. He's getting taken down even early on in his career, which I'm not going to go too deep into that because he has obviously improved a ton. And you can obviously tell this guy's a quick learner and a great learner, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. What, he's got 2, 3 years of wrestling now. That'll obviously get you to be able to defend a double leg takedown, which is why I think everybody's got such like a misconstrued, idea of how this fight's going to go, is because they've seen him defend shots from Cody Durden, which he didn't defend any of the unique takedowns that Ray Saruya has, and he didn't, really get off any trips, which Pantoja's great at, at trips and whatnot. But now you're going and looking at a Alexandre Pantoja who's been doing this his whole life, taking down everybody in the division. And now you also are giving him the size advantage as well. And the only guys that Pantoja's really struggle with, to be honest with you, are taller guys, taller, lankier guys. They're able to hold the distance and kind of move off the center line and walk Pantoja around the octagon. And even then, he still wins all those fights. So now you're giving up that size advantage. You're giving up the wrestling experience. You're giving up the jiu-jitsu guard game that, Roy Val had that made him have some success in that fight and survive on the ground. And you're going in now with a Joshua Van who's already shown a proclivity to just kind of do wild scrambles and just kind of see what happens, roll for leg locks, who doesn't really have the best jiu-jitsu game, doesn't really have a ground game at all, to be honest. I haven't really also seen anybody take Joshua Van's back, and that's something that Pantoja is going to absolutely do this fight, and he's going to take it fast. And I just don't know how good Joshua Van is in that spot. And I think, looking at anybody in his career, that Pantoja's fought, they really haven't done amazing against the backpack. I mean, you look at even a BJJ specialist like Royval getting dominated and getting beat to positions, getting out scrambled. I mean, I just can't see Joshua Van doing much better than Royval would be doing on the ground comparatively. So, another thing I wanted to go ahead and break down as well is, when I say Joshua Van is one dimensional, I know a lot of people are probably going to be getting onto the fact like, no, I've seen Joshua Van. Look at the knee stomps he was doing against Royval. Look at, he throws kicks, he throws some knees. Listen, if he's throwing any of the above that I just listed in this fight, it's just going to ruin his chances even more. He's got to be a pure sprawl and brawl boxer that's just going to take this to the fifth round and try to take Pantoja into deep waters. Hope that he can survive the first 2 rounds of getting taken down and hope Pantoja gasses and those takedowns are less effective. If he throws any kicks, you look at the Royval fight with Pantoja. A lot of the openings for those takedowns were from when, Royval threw a kick. Pantoja is not scared to charge right at you, run right after those kicks, slam up into the fence, and just fucking, look for a trip from there, take your back, hang out on a single leg, hang out on a double leg, and eventually get the takedown and, have one explosive movement and get those takedowns. So if Joshua Van closes that distance and gives him a limb and throws a kick, I think it's going to be wraps pretty early on. So the only game plan I could see, and the only reason why I wrestled with picking a winner on this fight and why the video is getting out so late, is because in that Bruno Silva fight, Joshua Van actually did show me a game plan that would be very viable to defeating a Alexandre Pantoja, and especially an Alexandre Pantoja of old that kind of does charge in a little bit reckless abandonment and gets a little untechnical with his striking, which he's actually improved a lot of. So, I mean, even this point is almost invalidated. But you look at how Joshua Van got off the center line and landed those combinations before landing the pole counter on Bruno Silva. He'd make sure that he was off the center line, avoiding, kind of the takedown, which I will say Bruno Silva and Pantoja do have that similar weapon where they, very much have forward pressure and almost just run at their opponents. That's definitely something I could see Joshua Van having a lot of success with. If he goes into this fight with the same game plan he had against Bruno Silva without any of the kicks, I think he's going to really shine in a lot of the boxing exchanges, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Pantoja actually gets him out of there within one or two. I think his ground game is just too elite, and I think the takedowns are going to be super easy. I think a lot of people, like I said, have the wrong idea about Joshua Van's takedown defense. While it is great, I just think he's so one-dimensional. He's young. He's not experienced. He's going against an absolute vet, one of the GOATs of the game. And I think the game plan is there. This guy has a pull counter, and that's about it. I mean, he's really got no ground game, no offense off the ground, no kicks that are dangerous. Like, the difference in being like Royval is tall and at least can throw out those weapons as feeler weapons and just kind of control the distance. Joshua Van can't do that. He's losing the size advantage in this fight, like always. And, I just don't see what he's got other than the pull counter, which can be neutralized by takedowns. So you guys tell me if you see anything different. I tried making every argument. I took about a week of watching the same fights over and over again, where before I was just like, you know what? Joshua Van just gets run through in this fight. And I get it. If he takes him into deep waters, looks like how he did against Bruno Silva, there's definitely an argument to be made. There's definitely that possibility. Same kind of situation with Islam Makhachev versus JDM 2 weeks ago, right? If he got him into deep waters, if he did gas him out, if he defended the takedowns, it's just not super realistic. When the mismatch of the grappling is this bad, and I don't think the mismatch on the feet is that bad, I do think it's a counter matchup, but I don't think it's going to be enough. When you have that much of a dominant specialist who is also well-rounded, great shape, holding the size advantage, has cardio as well, I think Joshua Van gets dominated. I think he gets him out of there early. I think Pantoja likely gets around 2 or 3 sub. So unfortunate. I love Joshua Van, one of the most fun fighters in the UFC by far, but he's going to learn a lot from this fight, and I think he will hold the belt in the future, but it's just not your time, bro. Sorry.